there is some trouble here brewing for Republicans in some of this data. It's not that the Democrats won, it's the margins by which they won. I mean, we're talking 14, 15% victories. I thought also most concerning, if I was a Trump advisor or somebody advising the Republicans, Latino support fell off a cliff in New Jersey and in Virginia for Republicans. President Trump got roughly 46% of the Latino vote, I believe, in the 2024 presidential election.
Great number. Healthy.
Great number. Spanberger and Sherrill both got about 67 to 68% of the Latinos in New Jersey and Virginia. So those Latinos who were Trump curious starting to drift back towards the Democrats. Maybe those votes are up for grabs. Then, of course, there's Mr. Mamdani in New York.
The name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it because we got to get it right. The name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. The name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it.
You mispronounced it. It's comrade.
It's comrade. Sorry,
yeah, not
comrade
Mr.
Mamdani.
Jesus, come on, get with the program. We got a little thing from the from what do you call it, the SEC. They told us you got to refer to him that way.
I will work hard. I was just, in my defense, I was just rushing to say that the first person he quoted in his speech was Eugene Debs. So quote. I'll just now quote Mr. Mamdani quoting Eugene Debs. The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. For the record, you probably could have found literally any figure in history who said something similar to I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. So he definitely wanted to quote Eugene Debs. I also just want to put it in sharp juxtaposition to Abigail Spanberger, who is the new governor of Virginia. Somebody asked her about President Biden back in 2021. This is the New York Times. And I'll just quote her as a congressman in 2021, quote, nobody elected him, Joe Biden, to be FDR. They elected him to be normal and stop the chaos. She was very, very, very critical of Biden. And I just want to throw out there, if you look on Polymarket, who the Democratic presidential nominee is going to be, who do you think is the favorite right now, Marco, with a 38% chance on Polymarket for being the nominee
Democrats?
for the Democrats? Yeah.
AOC?
No, it's Gavin Newsom. AOC is number 2 at 13%. Spanberger's not even on the list. Like you could purchase odds on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, LeBron James, Jon Stewart, and even Liz Cheney as the Democratic candidate for president. Also Stephen A. Smith, if you want to. She's not on there. Let the record show on Tuesday, November 11th, 2025, that I would just file, Spanberger as a potential dark horse.
And I think you've also said Gretchen Whitmer before, or was that someone else?
I've said Gretchen Whitmer, and she's where is she here on Polymarket? She's got a nice 1%. She's below The Rock.
Let's talk about this. I think this is a great introduction. I'm sorry, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, please, comrade, continue.
Yes, thank you, comrade. And by the way, the reason it's funny and we should make that point clear is because the takeaway from the conservative right, from Fox News and many commentators on the right, is that the dawn is very red, and that America's going. I mean, I had to sit through this idiotic dinner at one of the events I had to go to.
I hope they're not listening right now.
I mean, I kind of semi-hope they are, because I'm definitely not doing that event again. But at this event, I had to listen through this, semi-racist British old guy basically talk about Mamdani, and there's a neck vein is popping. And this is he was very, very indicative of everybody else who's obviously, watching what happened during the November elections here in the U.S. in 2025, and they're taking away that, we have a Democratic Socialist winning the mayorship of New York City. However, Spanberger and Sherrill are the diametrically opposite of this. And so if you are listening to this for a hot take, the hot take is pump your brakes. New York City is the most urbane, environment you can be in. Who cares what New York voted for, quite frankly? It's irrelevant unless you live in New York City. God bless you. Have fun. Tell me, how the government-run grocery stores work. The reality is that New Jersey State and Virginia which are states and that are a mix of rural and urban and have a different sort of milieu that people have to vote, they both elected um, very centrist candidates. Now, Mickey Sherrill over in that was in New Jersey. She's interesting because she is a lieutenant in the United States Navy. She was a naval aviator, so that is what's interesting about her. And Abigail Spanberger was a case officer for the CIA, literally doing one of the most difficult jobs in intelligence, which is actively recruiting foreign nationals on behalf of the United States of America so that they can flip sides and become spies. I mean, we're talking, these
We're
are
talking like Taylor Sheridan Lioness, basically. Is that what we're talking about?
we're talking to really serious people. Like, that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about, the whole thing, the quip, Mamdani never had a job, that obviously Cuomo was trying to go after him. Which kind of true. Definitely not the case with Mickey Sherrill, who knows, I think, what did she fly? I think helicopters. Yes. She flew the H-3 Sea King, which is very tricky to fly because most of the times when you're flying an H-3 Sea King, it is in very bad weather. So, that is, literally, you may die, not because anyone's shooting at you, but because you're flying an H-3 Sea King. And then Abigail Spanberger was putting her life on the line every time she steps out of her office, which was like the freaking streets of foreign countries. So, you can't really accuse these two ladies of not having had a job. They actually had a job, and they've had a job that majority of the GOP candidates they will face off against will not have had, including the Vice President J.D. Vance, who we all love. He and his illustrious career as, I believe, a journalist in the Marines. Now, I did not serve, so I cannot say anything to J.D. Vance. But the fact of the matter is that I think both of these, Sherrill and Spanberger, have just a rock solid military intelligence career, and both of them, as you pointed out, criticized even Joe Biden, who I would not accuse of being left wing. He himself campaigned on a centrist platform, which was the point that Spanberger said when she was criticizing him. We elected him to be normal, not FDR. I think that they will play to a very interesting crowd, and I think that most of the media is taking a completely wrong lesson. Who cares who got elected as the New York City mayor? It is irrelevant.
Yeah, it's sort of like the nonstop coverage we all have to suffer through of the LA Lakers or the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, nobody cares about the Dallas Cowboys right now. I'm sorry, Marco. I don't really care about the Lakers. I want to hear about other things that are happening in the NBA, but they put up the Lakers because they have good poll numbers. But I think it's not just that. I think the lesson, and this feels almost simplistic, but that's why I think it's kind of correct, or at least it's trending correct. Things are not going well for the Republicans. If you look at all the polling data, it says that you've got a large vocal minority of Democrats who are out there on the left, and you've got a large vocal minority of Trumpers, MAGA guys who are out there on the right, and there's a silent majority in the middle that is up for grabs. And for me, these types of candidates that won the governor races in New Jersey and Virginia, they're the ones who can talk to that middle. And the Republicans who could talk to the middle are doing nothing. They're sitting there kissing the ring, or worried about, and maybe this will change once they get past the primary filing deadline, so they're not worried about Trump primary challenging them with somebody in their district or things like that. But for me, the writing is on the wall in the midterms and maybe in to the next presidential election at this point.
Well, let's break down that a little bit more because, let's go into the numbers, which is what I mean we should do.
Mm-hmm.
So, Virginia election, Abigail Spanberger got 500,000 more votes than her Republican opponent. And this is Virginia. Why would a Republican candidate not be viable in Virginia?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Winsome Earl Sears, she got absolutely destroyed. She was the 42nd Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. And she born in Jamaica, African American, actually. So the Republicans put forward an African American woman as a candidate, and she got absolutely destroyed. I mean, this was not even closely to competitive. I think, 57% for Spanberger to 42% for Winsome Earl Sears. So that was a terrible performance by the Republicans in a purple state that they should have done much better for. And then in New Jersey, it was slightly better. Mickey Sherrill, basically against Jack Ciattarelli, 56.6% of the vote to 42.8%. So he outperformed his Virginia Republican peer by 0.4%. And she got also 500,000 votes more in New Jersey, which has on occasion, although much tougher than Virginia, but has on occasion elected Republicans in statewide elections. I mean,
Yeah.
thoughts? By the way, just to compare this, sorry to interrupt you. In 2021 election, Ciattarelli got 48% to Phil Murphy's 51%. So stark difference from the last gubernatorial election in New Jersey, where it was a close call. And in 2021, of course, Republican Glenn Youngkin defeated Terry McAuliffe 50 to 48%. So Virginia did flip, and didn't flip like mildly. It flipped in a landslide.
Yeah, which goes to, I mean, if you look at Polymarket, I already talked about the Democratic nominee, but if you ask which party wins the 2028 U.S. presidential election, you've got 54% chance for the Democrats and 47% for the Republicans. I mean, at the risk of looking like an idiot in 2028, Marco, I'm going to go on the record now and say that odds for the Democrats is way too low. I think the Democrat, I would put that number 75%. Like, the media wants to create this Trump authoritarian death of democracy narrative in the United States. And I think what's actually happening is that Trump is shutting down the government and behaving incompetently and focusing on all these things that average Americans don't really care about or don't really want. And now with the government shutdown and the flights around Thanksgiving, like, even your normal sort of completely apathetic, disaffected person who probably doesn't even vote is saying, what the fuck is going on? Like, we need things to work a little bit. So I just think it's headed towards like Democratic victory at the midterms and in 28. Like, I'm willing to go out on a ledge and say that.
Let me violently agree with you by disagreeing with you.
Okay, good.
Okay. So I'm going to disagree with you that Donald Trump shut down the government. It was clearly the Democrats who shut down the government, clearly. And yet they didn't get hurt. So, like, here I am, bathed in nihilism. I couldn't care less who wins. In fact, probably better for both of our businesses is that we have, I don't know, like Trump 3.0. Like, that would be amazing. And yet, I'm here to tell you that I don't think Donald Trump is guilty at all of this government shutdown. That's a liberal media speaking point. The Democrats wanted a shutdown. They thought it would be good for them to rile up the troops and all that stuff. They got it. The polls have blamed Republicans, but they were narrowing before this election. The momentum was against them. And yet, they crushed these elections. And that should really be scary. That even if you can make a reasonable talking point that this is the Democrats' fault, the longest shutdown ever, it didn't help with these centrist voters because they actually looked through the shutdown and are looking towards the number one issue. The number one issue for the past 6 months, you and I have been talking about this a lot. Every poll shows that inflation is the number one issue. Yeah. And here's where, okay, so turn the TikTok camera on.
It's on. Okay. It's always on. It's always on.
It's on. Here's where, on some level, you have to sympathize with Donald Trump because, and here's why. CPI is coming down. It's down. So the way you measure, CPI is down from Joe Biden level of 9% down to 3%.
Yeah, sure, but it's kind of been creeping upwards, and now we don't have data for the last however many weeks.
Here's what I would say.
I don't really know what it's doing.
No, but here's what I would say. I would say that any voter who says CPI has gone up 0.3% is just full of shit and hates Trump because they have TDS. So let me just be very clear. You have Trump derangement syndrome if you're looking at CPI numbers to say Trump didn't do his job. On the other hand, it doesn't matter, Jacob, because price levels are what actually people say. So no human being has the capacity to actually mathematically feel the month-to-month change in price, in consumer price index. No one's sitting there and being like, aha, Trump failed on his promise because CPI has gone from 3.2 to 3.7%. So you've got poor Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America, shaking his little fist, being like, but inflation's down since Joe Biden. And you're like, yes, but you're looking at the wrong thing. The problem is price levels have gone up. And yes, if you're Donald Trump, you're going to say, but it's not my fault. That happened during Biden. To which I would say, well, sir, but you're the first to engage in pro-cyclical fiscal stimulus. You're the one that started it in 2017 with your completely unfunded and unnecessary tax cut. And then in 2020, you and Nancy Pelosi locked hand in hand and spent $3 trillion on the pandemic, which was also unnecessary. So yes, then Joe Biden came in, after all of that. So no, this was a completely bipartisan effort to blow out the US budget deficit that created the price level that we're on. So the problem, Jacob, is even if the CPI were to go into negative 5%, which would obviously be Great Depression and we don't want it, but even if that were to happen, even if you had negative price changes for 3 years, Jacob, we would not get back to the price level of 2019 and 2020. So when people say that inflation is the number one issue, the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump is kind of screwed on that. And so, and also the next president may as well be, because price levels have gone up too high. So, and this is where I do think a lot of blame can be laid on the White House, because how do you fix price levels? How do you lower them? You need to unleash supply. You need supply side reforms. This is traditional Republican, conservative, Ronald Reagan shit, and they haven't done it. Scott Bessent was on TV all of last year promising the greatest deregulatory agenda we've ever seen, but they spent the first 10 months of their presidency increasing tariffs, which is a consumption tax. And so what I think, if they really want to fix this issue, if this is what they want to focus on, they need to come to Jesus moment, which for Republicans is not Jesus, it's Ronald Reagan. And they need to start doing supply side reforms ASAP. Otherwise, there's no way to fix it. And no one's going to care if the CPI is at 3.4, 3.7, or 2.8%. Those things are not discernible by normal human beings. Only economics nerds react to that.
Yeah, there's so much I want to say. First, did you see that video that was making the rounds at some, I forget, we'll have to see if we can splice it in, but of some young Republicans event where somebody's asking one of these young Republican men about Ronald Reagan, and they're basically like, yeah, Reagan was basically a communist.
If you think about it, Reagan really did lead us on this path. He implemented a lot of liberal social policies, and if you want to have a conservative economic policy, you have to have a socially conservative society.
What liberal policy did he start?
Amnesty, no-fault divorce. He was not very good on gun control and gun legislation. He was very free global trade, which hollowed out the interior of this country. And like I said, I'm from Kansas. The only jobs out there are manufacturing, hard labor. It's
no fault divorce. So isn't that after 60 days or 90 days you can get a no fault divorce?
Well, no fault divorce means that you can literally divorce someone for no reason, and it essentially removes all of the merit and all of the meaning behind having a marriage. Reagan's neoconservative libertarianism has started to hollow out this country. If you want economically conservative policies, you need a socially conservative people. And through socially conservative policies, we will engineer
So socially conservative policy, ending no-fault divorce?
Yes.
Ending.
I'm very, very pro-life. We need to prioritize the lives of our children, the lives of our family, and the lives of our community members. We are not the World's Bank. We are not an economic zone.
No more money to Ukraine.
Yeah.
No more money to Israel.
Yeah. I do not want to send aid to any country. Okay. We are not the world's police force.
I'm overstating it a little bit, but they hated Reagan.
Yeah,
they thought Reagan was the antithesis. The king of supply side reform, by the way, in the world right now is Xi Jinping. He's been talking about
Whoa.
and banging the drum on supply side reform
Nailed it.
since 2014. Like, he's the one who's closest to Reagan out there. If you're just thinking about
downright
economic policy.
Austrian, Jacob. He's downright Austrian. I'm putting a trademark on that joke. By the way, I do this joke all the time at events. There's always like one guy who chuckles. Surprisingly, doesn't work that well, even in a crowd where there's like 30% of people have a PhD in economics. It's a tough joke.
I mean, that's a tough crowd too. I also I think what you're saying though is deliciously ironic, because Trump is committing the exact same unforced error that Biden did.
Boom.
Because Biden, in the face of data, was saying, "But no, everything is better." Like,
Yes,
I know the data says this, but just trust me. This is we're living through such a great moment here. Like, you're doing fine, and everybody was like, "No, we're not doing fine." And Trump is doing the exact same thing. He's insisting, "No, this is the best thing ever. I have the best economy ever." And it's no, you're not doing fine.
But you know why? But you have notes for what you want to say, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I just gotta come in on this thing because you're so right.
Coming in hot.
Coming in hot. The issue.
Like Mickey Sherrill coming in on the helicopter. He's just going to blow it up as we go. Go.
Yeah, no, for sure. Mickey Sherrill is flying the Sea King. Listen. You're so right, Jacob. Income inequality went down from 2017 to about 2023, 2024. It's been going back up. So we have this data. This is like calculated. And anyone who tells me like it's going up in Europe too. No, it's not. It's not. It's going up in Germany from like super low levels to like reasonable. U.S. income inequality is through the roof. There was a period from 2017 to 2023 where, yes, it was moving in the other direction. Yes, mostly due to Trump's policies. No, they were not that intelligent policies. They were just showering human beings with cash and tax cuts. That's not a sustainable way to fix income inequality. Now, prices have risen and people are angry. And there's no way to point to a CPI and be like, "Hey, man, guys, you should be happier." It's lower than it was during Joe Biden. You're absolutely right. They're making the exact same error, but the policies they used as a palliative to solve temporarily America's big problem with income inequality have now exacerbated it. Who knew the populist solutions don't work on the long term? Who knew? Like, oh my God, shocker.
Which is exactly why you've got President Trump on Truth Social. We're recording Tuesday, November 11th. I think we'll get this out within 24 hours. But I went at you on X yesterday because he was talking again about this idea that he's going to helicopter out $2,000 payments to low and middle income earners from tariff revenue, which there's two things I want to say about this. The first is one of my reasons for thinking that there's more room for populism is as high as the debt is and as unsustainable as everything is. I think there's more room to run. Like, I think President Trump can be more populist before the United States runs out of money, and he probably will be. I also just want to point out this is another mistake I think the Republicans, and especially the MAGA crowd, have left. I want to call them the boy who cried left, because we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Biden, I think, governed more left than what he ran on. I think his instinct was to be centrist. But even the way he governed was not left. You want left? Mr. Mamdani, Comrade Mamdani, that's the left. AOC, Bernie, that's the left. They demonized a guy whose instinct was ultimately centrist, and he got a little bit old and senile while he was in office. So some things got hijacked to the left that he couldn't control. But like, Biden's not the left. And when you call out, then that's why I think it opens the door to people like Spanberger and Sherrill, because it's like, no, like this is what the center looks like. And if you've blown your bazooka after oh my God, the communists are taking over after Biden, there's just going to be outrage fatigue, because you can't keep doing that over and over again. And the second thing is just, the tariffs might be blown up in the Supreme Court in a couple of weeks. So the tariff revenue that he's going to redistribute as his populist payment to small and middle income earners in the United States, where's he even going to get it from? Because I mean, I don't know how you're feeling about this. I had a Yale lawyer on the podcast last week because it was beyond me to ask him what he thought was going to happen in the Supreme Court. And he was basically like, yeah, I don't think that this is going to stand. Like, the more interesting question is who gets paid back for these taxes that were wrongfully enacted? Like, is it the companies? Is it the countries? Like, how do you claw back tariffs, and how does all that work? Which is just to say, like, even his signature policy and the thing that he wants to use now to be the healing salve over the rise in prices, like, it's not going to be there for him. So or maybe it's not going to be there for
I
us.
think your point is extremely valid. Your broad thematic point, which is that you cried wolf on populism, but you're being populist yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great point. I disagree with some of the specifics, but that's okay. Whatever. The point is awesome. What I would say to you is on the actual, let me maybe go to 30,000 feet here. We work for investors, you and I, in our day job, so this is kind of a side hustle where we just want to spread some, I was going to say knowledge, but really this is just us bullshitting.
Well, hopefully it's going to, I mean, like, if enough of you listen to this and share with your friends, like, there's no reason that we shouldn't be like the Joe Rogan of geopolitics, guys. Like, and this is not that hard. Just like share it with people, please.
Just share it. Yeah. No, but like what I'm getting at is that in my day job, when I speak to emerging market investors, people who invest in Brazil, Turkey, South Africa, Indonesia, and so on, the number one issue they always worry about is there's an election, a populist wins election. And then the populist, to curry favor with the markets, finds a minister of finance that went to Chicago, that went to Wharton, that worked from Goldman Sachs, and boom, it's all good. Don't worry about it. So you've got a populist running the country, say Lula in Brazil, Erdogan in Turkey, but the finance minister is like legit, like red money, maybe worked in a hedge fund. We've got that in the United States of America. And I think that the biggest issue that you're actually flagging for 26, Jacob, will be what all of our clients who invest in emerging markets fear. And what do they fear? They fear that moment 12, 18, 24 months into an administration where the two sides start kind of not agreeing. And so my bet is that Scott Bessent wins. My bet is that the tariff rebate you're talking about will never see the light of the day, because not only has Scott Bessent been very clearly like shitting on it every time it's brought up, like openly, publicly, but it also would have to go through Congress. So it's very difficult to get it enacted. But if I'm wrong, my friend, Jacob, you have literally identified, I think, a huge, not just a political crisis in the US next year, but also a market crisis. Because if anything happens to Scott Bessent in the Treasury, if he's fired, if he leaves, if he says, I don't want to stand for this is crazy. We've done
this. If he retires because China's buying all of his soybeans off his farm in North Dakota.
Yeah. Whatever happens, I mean, this is a huge issue because we have an administration that does not agree on this issue. Just to be very clear, I mean, this is an administration that for the most part speaks in one voice. But when it comes to this idea of tariff rebate, they do not. Why? Because Scott Bessent understands just how stupid this is. If you want to stimulate the US economy, you need to bring borrowing rates down. And you do not do that with fiscal stimulus. We're now in a world where fiscal stimulus is bad. In 2016, when yields were 1.6%, on the 10-year yield, sure, the bond market was begging you to stimulate, whether it was Joe Biden, whether it was Donald Trump. When yields are below 2% on the 10-year yield, it's like the bond market is asking you to borrow and spend. But where we are today at 4.1%, any stimulus you do will actually detract from the ability of hardworking Americans to borrow. And so it's not stimulative. And this is something very simple to understand. And I think that Donald Trump will understand it because he understands how interest rates work. So that's why my bet, Jacob, would be we don't see this happen next year. But if we do, I think we've got a problem. And I think we'll be talking about this all of next year if this becomes a debate between the treasuries and the White House. A fight.
Well, and we also have to talk about it at the geopolitical level, because what are relations with these countries that you have these trade deals or tariff deals with also. But before we get to that, I want to cue some gladiator music right now, because you're saying Scott Bessent is an idiot, and I cannot help but think of Senator Gracchus in Gladiator, also speaking similarly about Emperor Commodus, but also respecting that maybe Emperor Commodus has a better hold on the heart of the mob and the Roman Empire, and that if you give them gladiatorial combat and you just keep throwing them bread and circuses, they will support you and they will love you. They certainly don't love Scott Bessent. They love Donald Trump.
But see,
they
I
love
disagree.
all the things that he does. So I think he might be. This is maybe his Commodus moment. And let's blow up some ships in the Caribbean. Let's get some football going, and we'll do some UFC fights on the White House lawn and the new Trump ballroom. It's just it's really perfect.
Right, but so this is where we have a disagreement, right? Does the American voter want a $2,000 check? And I don't think
Yes.
I don't think they do. No,
They
and here's why.
absolutely do.
If they did, if they did, if they did, um, why didn't Congress approve all of President Trump's electoral priorities? So we can put a mathematical number to the cost of President Trump's promises. He made a lot of promises during that campaign in 24. The cost of those promises was $15 trillion
Yep.
of additional deficit spending. We got none.
You're making the same mistake as Joe Biden and Donald Trump, because this is different. We're talking about $2,000 in your bank account, Marco. We're not talking about amorphous, a trillion here, a trillion here. I made this promise, I made that promise. We're talking about no. Joe Schmo in rural Mississippi. You've got $2,000 now, Trump bucks that came straight from the Trump administration because Donald Trump loves you. Of course they want it. They absolutely want it. But I do want to take what you're saying seriously, because I think two things can happen here. I think either you go down the super populist route and the Republicans end up supporting him in this, or
But they
the
didn't in
Republicans
January.
in the Senate and the House look at the midterms and look at the polling and look at how people are feeling, and they grow a pair and they say, President Trump, we're not supporting your agenda anymore. And you started to see, I think, a little bit of this, at least in the Senate, with 4 Republicans coming over to the side of the Democrats and trying to end the state of emergency that President Trump used to pass the Liberation Day
tariffs.
We're nowhere there yet in the House, but I think once we get through primary filing deadline, and if we still get poll numbers that are trending in their directions and prices trending in their directions, I don't think it's crazy to think that we'll get to a Republican House that might be looking at President Trump as a liability, not as somebody that they have to kiss the ring with, and then things get really interesting. But I think it could go the other direction. I think we could go super populist. Here's like $2,000 for all of you too. So yeah.
So first of all, we have to caveat, if there's a recession, obviously it's a completely different story. But we're assuming there is no recession over the next 12 months, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because if there's a recession, then I think the bond market would even be okay with $2,000, by the way. So and everybody would agree.
It's kind of our job to anticipate the recession. So I don't think there's going.
Assuming there isn't. But look, where I disagree with you is that I think you're not giving the Republicans in the House enough credit. They already did what you're saying that they should do, or that they will do, like grow a pair. So in December of 2024, mere days after President Trump got elected, in an incredible election where he won Hispanic votes and all this stuff, like extraordinary electoral victory by a Republican president like we haven't seen since 2004. And he asks Republicans in the House to punt the debt ceiling to 2029. They said no right away to him. They were like, no, we don't trust you. We want you to be constrained by the same debt ceiling Joe Biden was constrained with, and Obama. And then the second thing that happens in January is there's a revolt in the House of Representatives against his priorities. They actually increase spending cuts for the One Big Beautiful Bill. And the One Big Beautiful Bill, this is my point, it has none of his electoral promises. Mm-hmm. It has the tax cut extension, has some CapEx depreciation.
Yeah, it does have
tax on tips.
It has ICE has a budget now equivalent to the military of Italy, which you can make jokes both ways in that direction.
No, that's fine. Okay, that's fair. But when I say about campaign promises, he talked about lower corporate tax cut. He talked about lowering taxes individually even further. Again, it was like $15 trillion worth of stuff, and the House already revolted. That's kind of my point. By the way, this isn't my view. This is the bond market's view. Because yields have gone up from 4.8% in January to at 3.9%. They've crept up a little bit, but it's like a 100 basis point move. If there was a concern this year about blowing out the deficit, somebody would have said something about it. So I think that, in other words, Scott Bessent has been proven right this year. We got what the administration needs. It needs lower borrowing costs. And I think the House of Representatives kind of agrees with him, not with Trump's rebate thing. And so I think that Trump will keep bringing the rebate up. I just don't see how he gets it through his Treasury Secretary and through the House of Representatives. And so without a recession.
Yeah, I just think it's fundamentally different to talk, because everybody who will happily accept that $2,000 stimulus check and thank President Trump for it, absolutely, if you ask them, would probably say that they were against blowing out the deficit and spending all these trillions of dollars on all
For
of these
sure. Yeah, I
different
see your point.
handouts
Yeah.
and things like that. It's the same thing with the U.S. farmers. They, by and large, are conservative. I don't want to say all of them, but a majority of them voted for President Trump because they want all the things that Trump promises. And yet, when you get into a trade spat with China, they're asking for handouts. They're asking for handouts. And then when President Trump sees rising beef prices in the United States, and he says, "Okay, I'm going to quadruple beef imports from Argentina," and all of them are looking, okay, like that wasn't the deal here, bro. Like, you're not supposed to do that. Like, we've got higher prices. You're supposed to help us here. So the thing that was always incredible about Trump's charisma is that he has an incredible capacity to get voters to vote against their self-interest, because he's got that Commodus control over what do they actually feel? How can I really get them? And I think if he starts doing battle with Bessent, not over stimulus this and tariffs and all that, but he's like, no, I want to give you all $2,000. Like, that's what we're going to do here. That's how we're going to respond to the evil Biden, everything else. And don't worry, ththese $2,000 are different than Comrade Mamdani's $2,000 that he wants to give out to everybody else in New York
These
City.
are patriotic dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I'm circling on the point that, like, there is no fiscal conservative in the room. Like, it's all just flavors of populism, and it's all a circle. And eventually, the right and the left are just going to meet in the same place. And at the middle of the circle is Abigail Spanberger and Mickey Sherrill, and I don't see any Republicans sitting there with them, even if they said some mean things about the budget. Like, whatever, nobody cares about the budget. Like, yeah.
But that's why your tactical point and your secular point are kind of, speaking against each other.
True, yeah.
And that may be the case. Like, that's fine. Like, over the next 6 to 12 months, we see even more populism, and then we get to 28. But the fact of the matter is that Abigail Spanberger and Mickey Sherrill spanked their Republican opponents in November of 2025. And so, and you know what? The thing about politicians, Jacob, is that they're experts at one thing. They don't know a lot of things, but they're really experts at one, like truly experts. They're experts at sniffing out where the median voter is going. And so, again, I'm telling you, the House of Representatives revolted in January against President Trump's fiscal priorities. This is not arguable. This is the fact. We did not get the stuff he promised because the Republicans in the House stood against him. They did not need supermajority in the Senate. They could have used reconciliation to blow out the deficit by $15 trillion as he promised in his campaign. They did not do that. And now, on top of that, you, Jacob Shapiro, on a radio show podcast that everyone in the House of Representatives listens to, is flagging to these Republicans that you've got centrists winning in New Jersey and Virginia. So why would next year, like literally next year, not already reflect that centrism?
We'll see.
Why are we not there already?
Well, we might be. Maybe you're right. I think it's cute that you think something can be a fact and not be arguable. My wife would tell you that I pick fights over facts all the time, whether it's arguable or not. But I take your point. And I think it's also a good segue into the geopolitical element of this, which is how I think we should back into the China aspect of this as well, because we're now talking about tariffs and we're sort of circling around them. So why don't we dive straight in? Because it's very possible that the Supreme Court will rule in a couple weeks that the statutes that the Trump administration has used to push tariffs through, which account for roughly 70% of the tariffs, might be taken down. I don't think that Polymarket actually has. I only did a brief look. I didn't see that they had anything about the Supreme Court. Somebody needs to.
I've got one. I just pulled it up. So yeah. So
there it is. I see.
Yeah. So it's actually really interesting. Supreme Court will rule in favor of Trump's tariffs. That's how the question is asked. Mm-hmm. And after we got the November 5th news on Supreme Court questioning of the Trump administration, it dove from about 40%, yes, they will approve it, to 25%. So in one day, we had this huge decline. I'm going to have to, so I'll give you my view. I'm not a Yale lawyer, so I would definitely defer to the other podcast that you recorded and maybe link to it in the show notes. But I would say that Poly Market is overreacting. I think Supreme Court justices are going to be inquisitive. They're going to push the administration. They're going to ask tough questions of the administration. My bet is to buy this. I would buy this 26 cent currently because I think that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of Trump's tariffs. Because this is one of those things where Congress needs.
You think they
to,
will?
Yeah,
You think the Supreme Court is going to say that Trump's tariffs are legal?
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. Go on.
And here's why. I think that this is such a huge issue. This is such a huge political issue. When there's a huge political issue, Supreme Court tends to punt it back to Congress and say, look, you guys need to grow a pair of balls. Like, you have the constitutional prerogative, but you gave it up. You gave it up. Whether it's AIPA, whether it's 1930 Trade Act, whether this, that, you gave it up. Like, you want it back, go get it back.
They didn't give it up in AIPA, I would argue. I mean, we'll find out if the Supreme Court agrees with me, because the word tariff is literally used 0 times.
Yeah, right? 0 times. Yeah. No, listen, but that's the problem, though, Jacob. You see, the problem is it's also, how does Supreme Court rule against the tariffs? If they just come out and say AIPA is not good enough, like, you do know the 1930 Trade Act, you can fucking drive an aircraft carrier through that.
Yeah, and then we'll do this whole song and dance with that again, and we'll have yet another 10 to 12 months of complete uncertainty and nobody knowing what is actually happening and which countries are going to do what with the administration. I mean, it's just like a never-ending uncertainty spiral as we get into
it. Yes. But there is a version, by the way, where the Supreme Court comes out and says, like, no. I don't care what legislation you use. Like, you got to go back to Congress. That would be much more dramatic. If it's just like, so I don't know if striking down the tariffs by focusing on how AIPA cannot be used, given that the 1930 Trade Act is pretty liberal in what it gives the power, like, and it does use the word tariff, like, I just don't know if that's that relevant. You see, Jacob? Like, I don't know. What do you think? I mean,
yeah, like, you and I are not lawyers. I just think there's a fairly good, and I don't think we're going to get clarity one way or the other. Like, I don't think the Supreme Court is going to come in and we're going to have a clear answer. I think we are stuck in this nebulous middle ground where maybe they throw down AIPA and maybe they give extra time for them to come off, or then there's another statute that the Trump administration uses to reposition the tariffs, or maybe, like, we just have a lot of uncertainty. It's almost impossible to tell another country or a company or an investor exactly what is going to happen with us, and that uncertainty, I think, breeds a lot of volatility in markets and into the system. And I think it's interesting just to see how different countries are dealing with this. I mean, if you look at this US-China trade deal that the Trump administration is on about, I mean, like, if you go through and actually read what President Trump agreed to, it's okay, China's going to suspend implementation of new export controls on rare earths and other things like germanium and graphite. My understanding is they never actually talked about controls. They just talked about keeping track of things and issuing approvals. So they're going to, like, they're going to suspend something they didn't implement in the first place. They're going to take significant measures to end the flow of fentanyl into the United States. They're going to suspend retaliatory tariffs. They're going to buy some ag products, including Scott Bessent's soybeans. Remove some measures it took in retaliation around shipping and things like that. And the United States is going to lower some tariffs. It's going to further extend the expiration of certain 301 exclusions until November 2026. It's going to suspend the red line that China freaked out about, which you and I talked about earlier in the year, to 1 year, to November 2026. And it's going to suspend all the things on, maritime shipping and all those things, again, by 1 year. So it's like, it's not even a trade deal. China's just saying, okay, like, we'll buy some stuff and you'll push some things back a year, and then we'll just be here in 12 months. And then you can sort of, compare that to, say, how Canada and Mexico are dealing with this, or compare it to how Cambodia and Malaysia, both of which signed deals with the United States a couple of weeks ago, which were much more expansive than the US-China deal, and actually, like, have some teeth and have some provisions in there to try to allow those countries to not deal with China, or to make things harder for China in that sort of as a transshipment location for those things. What I'm saying is there's so much uncertainty, and I think all these countries are feeling the uncertainty, and there are a lot of different tactics to figure out, well, should we make a deal now? Should we be tough like China and just do the bare minimum? I think it's a really interesting and uncertain environment that we're going to be in, apparently, like, ad nauseum, because I don't think the Supreme Court's going to deliver us back to Congress and say, do it. So I don't know. I rambled a bit.
No, it's okay. I mean, here's my hot take to cut through that and get to
Please.
the, because I think that you're showing a lot of ways in which the Trump administration maybe didn't get really anything from China. The Supreme Court throws their signature thing into question and so on. But I'll make it even simpler. There's a Ipsos poll that goes back to 2000. I don't know how we show it, by the way. I'm not sure we can, but whatever, it's okay. And I think I've talked about this before, Jacob, on our podcast, but I've shown it to my clients, and it's one of my favorite polls. It actually helped me in 2016 flag to clients that Hillary Clinton could lose, which was a very unpopular view, of course. It shows the question is, does international trade contribute to jobs in America? And in 2016, 30% of Americans, 30% of Republicans agreed with the statement, and 50% of Democrats in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And Hillary Clinton loses because she was offside of that view, effectively. That was, I think, the main reason she lost in 2016. And then it skyrockets. Both Republicans and Democrats improve their view of globalization. And then it kind of dives a little bit with Biden, and now it's back up again to a point where about 65% of Republicans, 65% of Republicans agree with the statement that international trade creates jobs, and 80% of Democrats. So over the last over the last 9 years, Jacob, like Americans have actually become pro-globalization. And I feel like I'm crazy even saying this because people look at me like I have three heads. But the polls show this, whether it's this Ipsos poll or whether it's a plethora, a cornucopia of polls I still have that show that nobody wanted a trade war to begin with. This was a massive, massive political own goal by the Trump administration. And he needs to land this plane ASAP. And what I mean by landing the plane, he's the guy who took off in this plane. He's the guy who took the plane up. He's the guy who started the trade war with China. And the truth is, and I know you're probably not going to give him credit for this, but like that is what the voters wanted in 2016. He delivered but he delivered it. Mm-hmm. They wanted somebody to fight for fair trade. Clearly, a vast majority of Americans believe that between President Trump and President Biden, they got that fair trade delivered. And so nobody asked for 37% tariff on Switzerland or tariffs on the penguins of Heard Island. And so my view of what you're saying, when you're saying like, look, man, nobody knows what the hell's going on with these deals and this, I think the Occam's razor that comes out of the uncertainty you're painting next year is that the word tariff appears in White House communiques about as many times as it shows up in IEPA.
I don't know if he's going to give up on it that fast, but I think these trade deals that the U.S. not made with China, because you can tell that I don't think much of that one. And I'm curious what you think about that. And one of the reasons we didn't record last week was because you were in Australia and it was impossible to get the time zones right. And I know you had some views about what they were feeling in Australia about this. But if you look at the Malaysia and Cambodia deals specifically, the U.S. is talking about maintaining 19% tariffs, but many products, including foodstuffs, metals, aircraft parts, pharmaceutical inputs, just to name a few, are taxed at there's a 0% tariff. There's a most favored nation tariff on those things. So it's that reality show presidency that I've been talking about now for months, which is the Trump administration. I think will continue to talk about tariffs and deals and all the deals that they're making. But when you read the fine print, the deals he's actually making are, I get to say that there's this tariff rate, but on all the stuff that's actually really important that we're actually trading, that stuff's all still going to be zero and most favored nation. And you just shake my hand and
so like Vietnamese missiles that we're buying for our military, those are tariffed at 19%. Those are 19,
sorry.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas the shrimp is at zero, baby. So
I mean, funny you should say that. Like we have this is one of the craziest stats I've ever come across, because I had to do an event a couple of weeks ago that had some aquaculture and fisheries and things like that. The U.S. aquaculture industry is smaller than North Korea's.
That's
because
crazy.
In part we're importing lots of cheap shrimp from India and all these other places. Like we should be this. I'm like in the Gulf. We should be the shrimp capital of the world. Here we are importing all of our shrimp from India. So yes. Anyway, go on.
I mean, shit, did you just veer into like a Howard Lutnick speech there? I could see you like going there and then you pull back. Right at the very last minute, you pulled back.
Well, no, I'm the anti-Lutnick because I'm not going to talk about things that we couldn't literally, like, Lutnick was out there saying, like, yeah, we're going to tariff bananas because we're going to grow bananas in the United States. We can't grow bananas in the United States, but shrimp, like, has anyone seen Forrest Gump? Like, we could do shrimp tomorrow. We have plenty of shrimp. We don't have to be importing shitty Indian shrimp.
Yeah, I mean, wow, whoa, shots fired. Jesus Christ, Jacob.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you can walk out of your house and fucking dip into like the mud and get some shrimp, like, right?
Yeah, it's, as a Jew, it's really great being in New Orleans and being able to get shrimp.
All right. So you want my take on the U.S.-China deal? Okay, so
on the U.S.-China deal.
All right, look, I agree with everything you've just said. I have nothing to contribute. Obviously, this is not, this. I mean, the way you put it is really well articulated. But I will say one thing. I think optics sometimes do matter. And so President Trump and President Xi meeting is a big deal. Them committing to meeting 2 more times is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that U.S. and China are talking is a big deal. And I think that it's positive. Like, objectively, it's positive for humanity. Here, look, it even warms my nihilist heart. The truth is that it's very difficult to ignore. And I tweeted this, and I'm sure you saw it, but after the meeting between President Xi and Trump, Secretary of War, let's get that shit right.
Hot diggity.
I mean? The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, came out and said that he met his counterpart.
Yep.
And that they had a great meeting and that they're going to renew some of the communication between the U.S. and the Chinese military that was broken. Hey, awesome. As a human being living on this planet, whether I'm bathed in the Luffy difference or not, like, I'm kind of happy. Like, shit, you guys are talking to each other? Like, you mean you weren't? Like, what the? But at the end of this tweet, Pete Hegseth said, God bless the United States of America and God bless China. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at this extended metaphor to the 19th century that I've been introducing to our listeners. Like, President Trump is pursuing an amoral, not immoral, just amoral foreign policy that harkens back to the 19th century. Like, United Kingdom and the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire and the German Empire, they talked to each other, even though they hated each other, even though they were preparing for war. There was communication. There were congresses. They did not say to one another, you do not deserve to exist. And that is an important change in the narrative from the White House that actually, again, President Trump took off on this plane. On that plane were many national security hawks. There were many people who believed that Chinese Communist Party, when American politicians read out what CCP stands for. Like, yeah, bro, I know what it stands for. Like, the Chinese Communist Party, okay, bro, they've been in charge for fucking 100 years. Pump the brakes a little bit because your predecessors kind of met with them for decades, but sure. So that whole annoying moralistic normative value-laden way to look at China is gone out the window. And now the Secretary of War, God damn it, Jacob, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is out there saying, God bless China. So fuck yeah, I think that was an important meeting. And we should not scoff at it. Now, you're right, though, and I don't have anything to disagree with you on the trade front. Let's leave that aside, right? Because I think we've kind of beaten the tariff horse dead. But the reason it matters is because I was in Australia meeting really sophisticated, large investors managing hundreds of billions of dollars. And I can tell you this. A lot of them are sitting there and being like, what the fuck? I've allocated 0% to China because of you, America. 0, not 2%. No, I mean 0. I missed this whole rally where the Chinese stocks, by the way, if you're listening to this and you don't trade, God bless you. We want you here. We don't want to talk finance. Okay? We don't. This is not for investors. This podcast is for everybody, including my mom, including my buddies, a scaffolder, my basketball buddies, all of that. But let me just tell you, right now, if you're excited about how good American stocks are doing, the Chinese did 4x this year. The best performing stock market is the Chinese stock market. And I've got clients in Australia who are at 0% because basically Americans told them. You know what I mean? And their board and their government is like, hey, man, China's evil, right? Chinese Communist Party. And now, boom, God bless China. So, yes, I think this meeting mattered. And it matters because it tells the rest of the world, look, we're going to make a deal with China. Jacob Shapiro thinks it's a shitty deal, but, fuck him. He's a liberal in New Orleans. We don't care. Yeah. Right? So, we're just going to proclaim it as the greatest deal ever, as we always do.
Let him eat shrimp.
Let him eat fucking shrimp with cheese on it, motherfucker. Put that shit in your gumbo and put some cheese on it. Yeah. The point I'm getting at here is that, it does matter, man. As a signaling thing, Jacob, everyone around the world is sitting there like, whoa, what the fuck happened to the whole thing where this is a Maoist, Chinese Communist Party and we're not supposed to, make deals with them? You just not only made a deal with them, but you closed your tweet with God bless China. And so I think we're fully in 1880, man. Jacob, we are in a world of congresses, of swashbuckling buccaneers, making deals with enemies, allies stabbing each other in the back to get a better deal with an enemy. You think France is sitting there and being like, oh shit, I guess we should not sell them the best Airbuses. No, they're like, yeah, let's go to China and sell everything we've got. It's going to be very difficult, right? And that's the world we're in.
Yeah, right down to we're all going to have measles again too, because we're no longer going to give vaccines to measles to kids. Yeah, I just worked that in at the hour mark. Well, I have three little silly things I want to say, and then one more sort of broader thing. It's more of a question than anything else, not a disagreement. The first is, okay, immoral foreign policy. This is one that you and I disagree with all the time because all he did was pivot to something else. Now we're talking about the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. So there's always going to be some moral foreign policy coming out of this administration. They pick and choose. Second, I remember vividly, I was walking down the street and there was a CBD store on the way. I think I was going to an AT&T store to get my phone replaced. And there was a CBD store right next to the AT&T store. And the guy was out there. He had the dreads and everything and smelled like marijuana. And he came, he just started talking to me. And I was like, hello, what do you do? And I told him what I do. And he said, oh man, I got a tip for you. You should buy a lot of Alibaba stock, because he had the high eyes too. He was looking at me. It's like, I just bought a lot of Alibaba stock, and I think it's going to do really well. So these sophisticated Australian investors that you're talking to, just wander the streets of New Orleans and talk to the CBD dealers. You'll get better advice apparently than you were getting before. The third thing is just this U.S.-China deal. Fine, Pete Hegseth can say whatever he wants. I just don't trust it. I remember the phase 1 U.S.-China trade deal, and I remember all the fanfare around it and how everybody was saluting it. And within 3 to 4 months, we had the Wuhan virus and the breakdown in U.S.-China ties. All it's going to take is one little tiny thing for both of these sides to get angry at each other. And the deal itself, they're pushing stuff off a year. I bet something will break it sort of before then. But the bigger point I want to circle around, Marco, is because I hear what you're talking about, but I actually think that a U.S.-China alignment, a real one, not this fake one that they're talking about right now, is the biggest challenge to the multipolar thesis that's out there. Because I think there is a door that behind that door is the United States and China looking at each other and saying, we are the most powerful countries in the world. We are the wealthiest countries in the world. China makes things. The U.S. has capital. China has know-how in manufacturing. The U.S. has all of the innovative innovations. It's true wordsmithery for me. Yeah, just really, really good. Let's just divide up the world. You guys can have that side. We'll have this side. We'll work together. Everything will be great. I do think there's a world that goes bipolar in that sense. It's not my base case, but when things like this happen, when you get this U.S.-China deal, that's what I find myself kind of.
But it's not up to them. Countries have to choose. Countries have to be forced to choose, and they've been trying to force countries to choose, and they keep saying no. That's why we're in the world where they've been actively trying to recruit countries, and it hasn't worked. But look, let me go back on one point. It's not so much that I think that this deal is going to hold. That's not it. It's more once you start talking to each other the way you're talking, the rest of the world is just going to tune you out. Don't come back to me 6 months. If I'm Netherlands, and you're trying to get me to not sell ASML, highly sophisticated semiconductor CapEx equipment to China, don't come back to me 6 months from now. You just said, God bless China. Or buy my shit. Okay, you don't want me to, and this is why you cannot divide the world into two, because neither side is strong enough to basically compensate the allies. for divestitute of trade. And that's, I think, a very important game theoretical part of this. Like, how are you going to get the Netherlands to comply? Sure, you can use sticks, but what's your carrot with the Netherlands? What is America going to offer a country that has to sell stuff to China with which to make money in order to sink it into R&D, in order to be a good ally of America? Like, think about
maybe $2,000 direct payments in Trump coin.
I mean, yeah, like, right. So that's, anyways. But going back, this is why I do think it was important, because, and by the way, your point about phase one collapsing. I mean, people like to throw that a lot, and then it was funny because you said, and then some small thing will happen, and they'll be like, let's just be very clear what happened in 2020 for those of you who forgot, because you didn't, because you're pissed off about measles. What happened was, once in fucking 300-year pandemic happened, so
not once in 300-year pandemic.
Once in 100.
Come on, come back down to earth a little bit. Come on.
What is it?
Like, I don't know, once in every 15. It's probably getting less because we're going to have more these diseases that jump from animals.
Yeah, but I mean, SARS was like, okay, look, it's once in 100 years.
I wonder how much of COVID was a social media thing. Like, if you had social media, all the things around that time period. Like, I mean, if you go back and look at the history of like different flus and different diseases that popped up, like one of my big questions was like, why didn't we freak out about that one? That one was way worse.
We still have to do a whole episode on this, which will get me canceled. But like, leave that aside. Look. My point is, let's not minimize, though, how big the pandemic was. It was huge. Yeah, it was an enormous event. It originated in China due to some shady laboratory security policies, clearly. Like, and I'm not in a camp that they were like, whatever, doing. Like, look, it was an accident. Shit fucked up. We were helping them, like, engineer these viruses. So it's definitely a collective fault. And you got an election that Trump is going to lose. And he was going to lose it, by the way. It was my forecast in 2019 he was going to lose to Joe Biden. Before he got picked, like, he was going to lose that election. And I know, like, Republicans are going to be angry and they're going to be like, no, he wasn't, man. Yes, he was. Donald Trump was going to lose the election. And then on top of that, you have the pandemic. And on top of that, he panics and tells people to drink bleach. So he tripled down on anti-China policies. And I think that is an important, like, flapping of the butterfly wings in 2020 that did lead us into some very, very dramatic anti-China sentiment in the United States of America. Obviously, China didn't help itself putting missiles on fake islands in South China Sea. I'm not trying to absolve China and their aggressive foreign policy and wolf warrior, diplomats running around the world telling everyone they suck. But the fact of the matter is that I don't see another pandemic happening in the next 12 months. At least not one that originates in China. I think we can both be safe with that. So will American policymakers find another moment when they need China to be the enemy? Yes, I think you're absolutely right to think that happens. But I do think that the signal to the rest of the world is like, bro, you clearly are not treating China as an ideological enemy we can't deal with, that we're not allowed to talk to. If you're talking to them every 6 to 12 months, and if you're tweeting God bless China every 6 to 12 months, like, well, then I can't have 0% allocated to Chinese equities. Like, I need to make my own peace with China is kind of what I'm getting at. And that's what I took from this as being profound. American normative, value-laden, China's an evil Maoist empire. That narrative really kind of fell apart.
Yeah, but it in part fell apart because China's not ideological. But it's a good point. So let me put the question at you differently, because I don't want to. Well, no, China itself is not ideological. But like, why then, for example, is the United States doing what it's doing with Argentina, if not for ideology?
Oh, no. Okay.
There's no,
I agree with you. I agree with you. We don't have to make this about whether Donald Trump is a mastermind of foreign policy by applying.
Well, I don't even want to hold him at that
That's
level.
fine.
Like I let me put aside my contempt for a moment and just say, like, I want to engage with this idea that it's amoral foreign policy. But like, I think the foreign policy with China can be amoral because, unlike the Soviet Union, China is not ideological. Like, it does not have an ideology that it's pushing beyond enrichment.
A lot of people would disagree with us, by the way, Jacob.
That's true.
but 85% of probably Bethesda, Maryland, and Northern Virginia and DC disagrees with us. Like this is a controversial. It's like a Comrade Jacob and Comrade Marko view, right?
I mean, mazel to them. It's like it's fairly obvious to me that China's not ideological about this. But like when if I try to engage with your argument, and then I see what's happening with supporting Milei to the extent that the U.S. government is, like I literally like don't understand that, and I cannot find any justification beyond ideological for supporting a figure like Milei at the level that the government is supporting it at, with all the damage that it's doing to its core constituencies, because it's really pissing off even the most MAGA of MAGA people. If you ask them, they'll be like, yeah, this Argentina thing does not look good. Like it doesn't pass the smell test on like any single level. So, I mean, how do you square that with what you're talking about in terms of amoral foreign policy? Or is it just amoral with China and Argentina doesn't really matter? And
well,
so
I think
he's
it's
just doing whatever he wants.
What I would say is it's amoral on the three big foreign policy issues of the day. Like I think Israel-Iran tensions could have gone a lot worse if Trump started using the usual language that Washington, D.C. uses for Iran. Bombing Fordo and then quitting probably would not have happened if Kamala Harris was the president. We probably would have had to do more to justify it because they're evil and they must be the next Hitler. You wouldn't be able to talk to the Russians because Putin is the next Hitler. Right? So like this moralizing in order to create domestic political buy-in for foreign policy, that clearly seems to be gone with the three big issues of the day. I 100% concede that Argentina was ideological, and I 100% agree that Nigeria was him watching Fox News without having had a Snicker bar beforehand. But like, so I have nothing to counter it except to say that like if there's like some pie chart of foreign policy decisions, I'm pretty sure that Argentina is like a small sliver, right? I mean, it's not that relevant. It's costly and domestically costly, you're right. But the three biggest geopolitical issues of the day are U.S.-China relationship, Russia-Ukraine war, and Israel-Iran tensions. And the Trump administration has, on those three occasions, been very, I think, realist and very non-ideological. Now, yes, your point, I think in one of our podcast episodes were like with Israel, he could have put pressure on Israel much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think you're right with that. Like, I also don't have an answer to that. So I don't think it's a 1 or a 0, But I do think this administration has swung very much into like a realist, let's lower American commitments around the world in a way that doesn't completely leave that region in chaos.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this. They're talking about an airbase and a U.S. security presence in Damascus as part of a security pact with Syria. So like you have what you say on the one hand, and then you have no, actually, now we're doubling down on Syria. And I think this is also a good chance to ask. I mean, and maybe this is the last thing we touch on. I mean, Venezuela is also just sitting there, and we've got an aircraft carrier in the Caribbean. Like, you've got reports that Rubio is really pushing a sort of classically neocon policy within the administration, and that he's been able to bend Trump's ear on that. But now Trump is starting to get buyer's remorse, and he's even saying, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, how do you square the Venezuela thing with what you're talking about? Because I agree with you. He's been rather unideological. He's been unideological in China. I think it's fair to say he's been unideological on Russia, Ukraine. Iran, Israel, I think it's harder to make that argument, but I'll grant it to you. But like, what about what's happening with Venezuela? Like that also feels patently ideological to me, or at least people within the administration are using him to push an ideological point of view on this foreign policy.
Well, first of all, let's make some polymarket bets just because it's cool. Yeah. I'm going to buy this contract. Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump's tariffs. I'm buying $1 million worth of 26 cents. I'm just joking. I'm not actually doing that.
Yes, this is not investment advice, blah, blah, blah. We're just doing this for entertainment and jokes. Thank you, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. So, it's awesome. I'm going to make 74. And then will the U.S. invade Venezuela? Okay. So let me give you the dates. Actually, I think this is interesting how low it is. Mm-hmm. I did not expect this, but December 31st, 2025, it's only at 7%. March 31st, 2026. I think we should use that one. That one is at 13%. It's really
that's invasion.
Down.
Just the military engagement is at 49% for March.
49. 20. Well, by the way, in November, in November, the first week of November, it was actually at 30%, 30 cents. It's now down to 13. That's interesting that it's fallen. I guess because he did make that statement, like we're not gonna invade.
Exactly.
Look, I have no idea what's going on with Venezuela. Jacob Shapiro, I think we're supposed to sit here and offer some views. I think first of all, you're stronger on this region. You've followed this very, very. I know this is one of your babies, but tell us, like, how do you explain the assertive foreign policy towards Venezuela?
I sort of wrote out my thoughts on this on the Substack. It's for me, it's either one of two things. Either the neocons are capturing him and they're using language around immigration and drugs, which is the only thing he's really polling positive on to get the message. And he's fine blowing up drug ships and things like that because he thinks it does well for him. And the neocons in the administration get to push forward. And he'll sort of get trapped into that narrative. Or it's classic Trump. It's sort of what he did on the Korean Peninsula during the first term, which is threaten use of the button and 2 aircraft carriers, and I'm going to, fire and fury and the whole 9 yards, so that he can get to some kind of modus vivendi or some kind of deal that he gets to take credit for. The thing that makes me nervous about Venezuela is that, at least according to the reporting that I've read, that doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean that there isn't something else that Trump wants. But the reporting suggests that Maduro already gave him everything he wanted.
Right. That was an interesting. Yes, the exchange between the journalist and President Trump was shocking. We should splice it because it was amazing. He's like, you don't fuck with the United States.
Well, he said that, and then the New York Times had an article a couple of days later that spelled out exactly what Venezuela was offering. They were offering to basically cut ties with China and Russia. They were basically offering concessions to U.S. oil companies and mining companies for anything that they wanted. They were literally just giving Trump everything that he wanted in return for Trump, like, not messing with Maduro and letting Maduro stay dictator in chief of the country. And that journalist asked Trump, whether Maduro gave him everything, and Trump said, yes, he's already given me everything, and yet we're still deploying aircraft carriers.
Mr. President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys. Let's go. Start moving. Thank you, guys.
So, like, when this happened with Kim Jong-un during the first Trump administration, eventually Kim Jong-un agreed to meet with President Trump, and things, the water went down from a boil to a very nice soup, and they both started eating it together, and everything was fine. So I just don't know what's going to take Trump away from that. Or maybe he just likes, the muscular, I'm going to blow up drug ships in the Caribbean, and that's good for my poll numbers. I need to show that I'm doing things as the government is shut down and as all these other problems are proliferating. That's the thing that makes me uncomfortable, because I don't see what more Venezuela has to give. And so either he has to just continue at this level, or he has to escalate. And there are definitely folks in the administration who are pushing for escalation. Little Marko, chief among them. So.
Yes, me being, of course, the big Marko. Just FYI. By the way, Jacob, I think you're onto something, and I just think it might be a time issue.
Say more.
Well, I mean, just why can't the negotiations could be happening behind the scenes, where Trump wants more or less, or guarantees or specifics. I mean, the aircraft carrier just got deployed. This just started, 90 days ago,
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
In terms of the deployments, I mean, one of Trump's first moves was to send a special ambassador down there to have negotiations. And that guy's been working his butt off trying to get this deal put together. So
that's why I just think I think you're onto something. And I don't think it's necessary for us to put a pin in it. I think it can be all of the things that you're saying at the same time. It just hasn't been enough time. And even with Kim Jong-un, I mean, the negotiations took time. Trump always does what he does. He always leaves remember he canceled the Singapore summit after all the fire and fury. After all the fire and fury.
Fire and furry. Yeah, that would be interesting if it was fire and furries. That's good.
It was very furry. But he cancels the summit, and then we go back and forth. So I think that's why. And by the way, this is the part of this that I would want to point out. Like, can you imagine if everything you just laid out does happen?
You mean if he invades or if he gets some huge concession out of Venezuela?
Everything you just said, like Maduro's like, I'm your dictator. Because see, this is the problem for America. And it has been a problem since the end of the Cold War. Or rather, it's been a problem since America was no longer a unipolar hegemon.
Mm-hmm.
America kind of scored an own goal. During unipolar world, America could create rules and norms, enforce morality and value-driven foreign policy. If you did not abide by it, U.S. would bomb you. And then the world becomes more complicated. But America still retains a value-laden, moralistic foreign policy. The problem is now you've closed off the ability to buy off dictators. Right? And now, but the world is no longer unipolar. You're not in charge. Not everybody wants to eat in the McDonald's. And like China's got some cool stuff, and you can go through the Wagner Group and the Russians. Like there's alternatives now. And you're still sitting there in a corner pretending, whistling by the graveyard of American empire, pretending that you can still tell people like, no, you need to respect liberal values. Or as Hillary Clinton famously said, we don't recognize spheres of influence. Like, what? What are you talking about? Those days are over. Like, you have to recognize spheres of influence, and you have to combat those spheres of influence using all the tools in the toolbox, which includes, threatening a dictator, but allowing him to flip sides.
Mm-hmm.
And as a country, being morally okay with that. And who better to do that than Trump? What I'm telling you, Jacob, is what happens if he doesn't want to invade? What happens if 12 months from now we do have a deal with Venezuela where Maduro's now our dictator, right? Like classic Cold War Latin American, like he's our guy. Yeah, but he's terrible. Yeah, but whatever. He's our guy. He's good.
Yeah. Well, then, you were talking about quote emerging markets. Like Venezuela will one day be one of the biggest true emerging market opportunities out there. And apparently, if you're close to the throne, you're going to get there. What you were saying about McDonald's, by the way, made me laugh because I don't know if you saw that that Burger King is making a deal with some Chinese private equity group to try and like spread Burger Kings throughout China. So there are apparently still people out there who think everybody does want a McDonald's or a Burger King. Boy, would I bet on the opposite side of that equation. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
But I just think that, this is something we need to follow very carefully because, because this could be one of those big, like, you can either support your thesis or my thesis. But if he manages to flip Maduro, like that will go, I think, it's not exactly like flipping Mao. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the whole analogy, but it's not like Kissinger is flying from Pakistan to China, right? But you flipped a really large producer of oil that was a thorn in your side, in your hemisphere, that did align itself with China and Russia, and the guy just cried uncle after what? You sent 2 aircraft carriers? Like, that's like the cheapest flip job ever, right? And you killed some 6 boats that may or may not have been poor fishermen, but that's so anyways, I think it's an interesting thing. I'm glad you were focused on this because we do tend to ignore what's going on down there, and I think it's very important. Same with Nigeria, though. Nigeria is just an element of that I think has no logic. There's nobody to flip there. And it makes absolutely no sense. In Nigeria, you've got a terrorist group terrorizing people, whether they're Muslim or Christian. And President Trump is like, we got to defend Christians, And I think part of that, Jacob, I do think there's an element, and you said this in your, monologue too. Like, there is an element here where he has to just look tough. So notice how he punched Canada in the face on the way to making a as you like what you would refer to as a non-trade deal with China.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an element here of showmanship and kind of, I guess wrestling. You got to punch somebody in the face if you're going to make a deal with somebody else.
Yeah, there's 2 things I want to say there. The first is I also find myself using this framework, but if we are returning to the late 1800s, the Caribbean region in general is going to be much more important to the United States than it is today. Like if you look back at the late 1800s, early 1900s, when U.S. presidents traveled abroad, it was usually to that part of the world first, and it was where they were singularly focused, and there was so much U.S. economic opportunity there. Like, it was a true sort of it was the true backyard of the empire. So if we're headed in that direction, that's where you're going to get asymmetric opportunities in the Western Hemisphere, especially if you're a U.S. investor and you're looking for that asymmetric upside. So that's number one. Number two, lest you think that I'm suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. Obama did this thing too. Like, I'm making fun of Trump with the Christians in Nigeria. Do we remember the Lord's Republican Army? How Barack Obama woke up one day and was like, yes, we're sending U.S. military advisors to Uganda because the Lord's Republican Army in Africa is killing people and we have to capture these people.
I totally forgot this.
Yeah, I know. So, like, this is just, just like every single president tries to make peace with the Israelis and Palestinians, you pick out an African group that you think is guilty of savagery and you send some U.S. military advisors to take care of it. President Trump, as always, he just has a particular flair for doing it. Nothing is exceptional under the sun.
No, I think it's interesting. And I think it's going to be a very, very exciting time over the next 5 to 10 years, because if we are going back to the 19th century, one of the things we know, we use 19th century, by the way, as a shorthand for a multipolar, swashbuckling insanity. Probability of conflict rises because you can have countries go to war more easily because there's nobody really in charge. There's no one country, two countries. It's very difficult in a bipolar world to have an independent conflict between two. Like, Greece and Turkey almost went to war, and the Soviet Union and the US are observing this thing happening, and the Russians are like, sweet, this is awesome. And Americans are like, you guys are part of NATO, man. Cut it out. You're not allowed to go to war. But we hate each other. You cannot go to war. That's why it's very tough to have like just independent pairings. Political scientists call it dyads. I don't know why, but they do. It's very difficult to have dyads that emerge out of like just, self-hatred. Like Armenia and Azerbaijan are like, hey man, we want to fight it out. We want to figure out who's stronger. In a bipolar world or a unipolar world, it's less likely to occur. So what's interesting about this is that everyone listening to this has to just be aware that, yes, conflict is more likely. It's more likely that you just have like Cambodia, Thailand thing that happened for a couple of weeks.
Well, it looks like it's happening again. I don't know if you saw, Thailand actually suspended the deal that Trump negotiated. This on Polymarket, I don't think it's happened yet, but Trump's Nobel Peace Prize odds, those Nobel Peace Prize odds going down because Thailand, they're back at it. Like, let's do it. So,
but like, I really think this is important. Like, we're going to have more of those kind of situations, but everybody should cool it. It doesn't mean we're closer to World War III. Because that's the lesson from 19th century. We had 100 years of relative, peace between global powers. Wars were quick, brutal, and limited. And why were they limited? Because when it's a fight over spheres of influence, it's not a fight over values, morals. It's not an existential war. It's not a war for the quality of life. Once morality gets taken out of foreign policy, wars can be briefer and more easier to solve. And not everyone is Hitler. That's what's important. Like, not every fucking dictator who does something you don't like is the next Hitler.
Yeah. I wonder if they were saying the same thing about Napoleon. But we're saying the 19th century. It's La Belle Epoque is usually my shorthand for it. But I assume before Hitler that Napoleon was the boogeyman, but I don't actually know that. I'm just guessing.
Well, yeah, the next Napoleon. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we're referring to the post-Napoleonic 19th century. So, after that was resolved. And it's very interesting. That century is actually referred to, like the concert of Europe. That's what we call it. And many people would also refer to it as the Long Peace, and between 1815 and 1914. And the truth is that it wasn't peaceful at all. You had wars every single year, pretty significant wars. But
Crimean War, Franco-Prussian War. There's a couple in there.
Schleswig-Holstein War.
Look at that. Just
Just
dropping names. Yeah, of course.
but all these conflicts were again over like very very specific things, and so it did not lead like the Franco-Prussian War is an interesting war. I mean, um, Germany won and literally signed the formation of German Empire in the Hall of Versailles. Like that was done as an FU, but like they didn't dismantle France. They didn't come to
No.
France and tell them how they should live. They took Alsace-Lorraine, but like that was like kind of it, like, hey, we're good. Like, let's move on from here. And I think that's important. It's important because I think we're entering that kind of a world. So a lot of the listeners are not going to find any solace in my point, but it means that you can have a high frequency of conflict, but not necessarily the kind of moralistic and value, pissing contests that tend to lead to existential conflicts where we're fighting over, our way of life is being threatened. I'm not sure that that is on the horizon if we lead to a more amoral foreign policy. And that is the paradox of Trump that I've tried to explain to people. It's very difficult to explain. The paradox of Trump is that once you are amoral, you can approach foreign policy in a much more calculated way. And yes, that does perhaps increase probability of conflict, but limited conflict. Because you're not telling the Iranians or the Chinese or the Russians, we hate you, you are the next Hitler, and we have to change the way you behave. No, we just don't like you doing X. Stop doing X.
Yeah, I'm going to reach here, but I think one of the things you can also say is that if that becomes the general point of view, that not all wars are light versus dark and good versus evil, that you get countries that start focusing more on what's happening within their own borders. Because what else happened in the 19th century? The U.S. Civil War and revolutions in France and in Germany and Italian
1848,
unification and
yeah.
the slow decline of China, which eventually ends towards the end of the
Spring of
century, and the
Nations.
Opium Wars in between them. So there actually is, and that's also the Meiji Restoration. Like you get all of this both positive and negative churn in countries themselves, and the ones that have good policy and are at the forefront of energy security or innovation or socioeconomic cohesion, they can do extremely well. And if you are divided and fractured internally, well, then you no longer have these external outlets. You can no longer say there's this evil thing out there that I have to attack. So the enemy actually comes from within. And so like societies start to have this different pressure within them. And I mean, for me, that's the most troubling thing about the United States. Like, I don't think we're headed there for the record, but like it's one of the scenarios on the bingo card. If the average American lets those vocal minorities that we talked about at the very beginning of the episode dominate the discourse, which we have thus far. So.
Although I would go back, if I can, to your initial takeaway from the elections. And your initial takeaway from the elections is like everyone's focused on Mamdani, but Mickey Sherrill, is sitting there as a counter. Like the takeaway is centrists who appealed to a broad coalition actually won the New Jersey and Virginia governorships. So I think that kind of the solution to your concern is just sitting there. And I think that this is the hot take. The hot take for 2028 is that a whole bunch of people are going to try to be Trump 3.0 on the Republican side. And a whole bunch of people on the left are going to try to replicate Mamdani because he's cool and he's like interesting and exciting. And it could create a national equilibrium on both sides. And the big, like, surprising take in 2028 could be we could have just like two kind of boring centrists win those primaries.
Yeah, we could. The flip side, Steve, if you listen to Steve Bannon, Trump 3.0 is going to be Trump 3.0, though. And I know you haven't watched Andor, but if you've watched Andor season 2 and you've watched Mon Mothma's incredible speech to the Galactic Senate, when you get into these areas where if the extremes have hijacked the conversation for long enough, it comes to be that whatever monster screams the loudest is the one that dominates the discourse. I mean, you made this point, I think, 2 or 3 episodes ago. None of the elites in Europe in the early 20th century thought that World War I was going to last that long.
Yeah.
Ditto for the U.S. Civil War. They thought it was going to be 1 or 2 battles and that was going to be it. So oftentimes these centrists and these moderates get in this position where, okay, we're just going to let off a little bit steam, but cooler heads are going to prevail. But if you have these crazy people who are out there on the margins, and if they're pushing policy in these directions, like you can very easily get caught in a much deeper situation that you can't get out of. But all that said, like that's very doom and gloomy. I happen to think you're right. Like I think Nixon's silent majority is sitting there waiting to be taken. And I don't know whether it's going to be Democrats or Republicans. If you asked me today, it looks like to me it's going to be moderate Democrats who are going to put the coalition together there. But yeah, I mean, you could drive an aircraft carrier through that silent majority that is sitting there waiting for someone to talk sense to them into the United States. And I think that's ultimately like the United States' greatest strength. They don't need a Emperor Xi Jinping to come in and do all these things. Like I think there is a center in the United States that is looking for someone to talk to them that way. So
this is a very optimistic hour and a half. I mean, I hope you're right. And I think that your takeaway from the election is correct. I think way too many people index on what's interesting and new and not what's boring and kind of like, but so dramatic. I mean, those victories, just look it up, folks. We're not making up the numbers. This was a shellacking. Like,
yeah. All right, Marko, I got to go. I'm sure you got to go too. But we will do another episode this Friday, listeners. And then next week we'll have a special guest.
Yeah, we owe you. We owe you. At least one. So we'll do 2 this week. So
yeah. And Marko, we have to get our geopolitical movie episode on the calendar too. So just let me know when you're. I've been doing my research. You let me know when you're ready.
I think we should do it after Christmas because I intend to turn my everything off and watch some cool movies. How about that?
Okay.
Because I gotta like rewatch a few of these, to get some really, really cool stuff.
All right. Sounds
cool.
good.
Thanks,
Cheers,
buddy.
dude.